there and welcome to TripsKit. In this video, I wanted to share our experience traveling to Canada. We went on a relatively short trip of 5 days. Yes, I know it is nowhere close to being enough to explore Canada, but to be fair, we only stayed in Quebec province and spent most time in Montreal and also went on a short trip to Quebec City. So this video is going to be all about Montreal and Quebec. It took us around 6 hours to fly from London to Quebec. It was a direct flight. When we landed, we immediately took the bus 747. It's a public bus that goes straight to the city center. And in no time, it took us about maybe 40 minutes, we arrived to our hotel. We stayed the first 2 nights at a hotel called Residence Inn by Marriott. It was a nice hotel. I will leave the link to the hotel in the description of the video and in the pinned comment if you're interested in booking it. I can overall recommend it. We were pretty hungry because we tried to sleep in the airplane and we went to a place called La Cantina, which is a lovely Mexican restaurant. Jose approved the food, it was good, so I can also recommend it. Then we had a couple of hours to rest. We went to Aritzia. I really wanted to see the shop because it doesn't exist in London. And then it was time to meet our friends. We actually had friends living in Montreal, but our friends were actually moving to Berlin, Germany pretty soon, so we wanted to rush and visit them there while they were there so they can show us their favorite places around Montreal and travel with us to Quebec City. So that we did. So we took underground to a really nice area that our friends approved and wanted to show us first. Actually, my friend told me that the underground, even though it looks beautiful, it actually breaks quite often. I can't say anything about that because the times we had to take it was working fine, but well, that's something to keep in mind because she was local and she had to take it pretty often. So the place we visited first, Plateau Montreal, is home to probably the most popular restaurant in Montreal called La Banquise. It's a 24-hour restaurant serving poutine with bunch of toppings. So there are so many different varieties of poutine. Poutine, by the way, if you haven't heard of it, is probably the national dish of Canada. It is, I would say it's fast food. It is greasy. It's not healthy, but it's really, really delicious. In case you're on a diet, I still recommend you trying it at least once. I'm not saying you have to eat it every single day, but it is worth trying because it's insanely delicious. Basically, it's fries, chips with gravy and a bunch of toppings of your choice. You can add pickles, you can add bacon, and well, it's greasy but really delicious. After such a big meal, we absolutely had to walk around the area, but to be fair, it was pleasant because the neighborhood is really nice. It has a lot of street art and overall has plenty of nice shops and cozy pubs you can stop by. So that's what we did with our friends. We just finished working today and we are currently heading for lunch to the Time Out Market. Today is a little warmer, but I definitely brought not very suitable clothes for Canada. Time Out Market was located in a shopping mall with a really large Lululemon, which I absolutely had to visit. There is no Time Out Market in London, so I really wanted to visit one for ages, and it felt like a perfect opportunity to go to one in Montreal. It had a lot of trendy eateries, and we settled for a burger, which looked amazing, by the way, but it felt a little bit unhealthy. I felt like it had a really high sodium, sugar and salt content. I noticed that with some street food places in Canada, and it doesn't usually happen in London, but in Canada, when I was eating out, I felt a little bit dizzy. Our friends told us that it happened to them too, and that's because some places just add a lot of salt and sodium into the food. So if you have some health issues, that's something probably to keep in mind. And please let me know in the comments if that ever happened to you anywhere in the world. The only other place where it happened to me before was United States. So maybe that's just something United States and Canada use. We walked around the city center for a little while and went to a supermarket to buy some food to bring to our friends because we were visiting them later and we wanted to have dinner together. So we popped to the supermarket, bought everything we needed, and went for a little walk around the Chinatown area. I wanted to try bubble tea in Canada to see if it's any different from bubble tea in London, and also saw some really nice places that are definitely worth visiting. Overall, I think the Chinatown in London is a little bit more impressive, definitely 3 or 4 times bigger, and has a lot of restaurants. But this one is cute too, and to be fair, we found everything we needed. Our friends live not too far from the city center, but we had to take the underground and travel for about 8 stops, which took us around half an hour. We arrived outside, slightly outside the downtown of Montreal, to the place called L'Église, the church, and we just gonna head to the place where our friends live. I have a feeling that this underground station got its name from this beautiful church that is located in the heart of this neighborhood. Our friends lived about 8 minutes walking from the underground station. There were quite a few different shops. Overall, it looked very residential, nice. As you can see, the trees just started getting leaves. I imagine it's really, really green in summer. And that's how a quiet residential street of Montreal looks like. Some of these houses are divided into flats. I think some of the other ones are townhouses. So overall, it's not too dense and there is plenty of breathing space and just plenty of opportunities to walk around. The next morning, we continued exploring Montreal. It was a little bit rainy. In the morning, we wanted to explore the old town with the most historical buildings, but the first stop was located in the old bank. And you probably, if you have been to Montreal before, you probably know which place I'm talking about. It's the trendiest coffee shop in the whole Montreal. It's always very busy, but it's gorgeous. Honestly, one of the most beautiful coffee shops I've seen in North America, and it's called Crew Collective. And there is also a co-working space nearby in case you're interested in working remotely. And then we popped to a place nearby for a donut and started walking towards the old town. This part of Montreal I like a lot. It feels spacious, it has a lot of historical buildings, and overall it looks really nice. The only downside that there is a lot of construction going on, and some of the streets in the old town were being dug up completely and kind of blocked off. There was a little path for pedestrians on both sides, but you couldn't take any nice pictures at all, and there was a lot of noise and construction, which was a little bit unfortunate. But there were some streets that were still open, like this one, with pretty iconic souvenir shops. Some of those shops were really gorgeous, so I couldn't film, unfortunately, I couldn't film inside, but we bought a couple of souvenirs in those shops. The next location that is definitely worth seeing in Montreal is the pier and kind of the port area. There is a Ferris wheel and there are plenty of stalls where you can buy popcorn and some drinks, but overall it has a really lovely promenade. By this time it actually also got much warmer, so it was very enjoyable to walk around, and the views from here are absolutely gorgeous. You can see kind of the whole skyline of Montreal, so definitely worth visiting. That was probably one of my favorite spots in Montreal. After exploring this area, we were still in the mood of walking, so we wanted to explore the rest of the old town of Montreal and start walking towards another area we wanted to see called the Village. That is, I think, a gay district in Montreal, but there are also plenty of nice coffee shops and really nice bars we wanted to see, so that's where we headed. It took us around half an hour to walk here. The walk was pretty interesting, and then when we reached the area, that's how it looked like. As you can see, it has plenty of shops and bars, but it was still quiet because it was really early. The party here starts after 6. Overall, it was a nice area to explore. Overall, I think Montreal is a nice city. The only downside I could think of was the number of crazy people we saw in the underground and on the streets. I even managed to film a little video about a person who was trying to destroy a school bus. So he took a sign and he was like hitting the bus really hard with the sign. It was a little bit scary. Unfortunately, there are lots of drug addicts that live on the streets, and unfortunately, the government does nothing to help them or to improve the safety of the streets. However, in our next city, this wasn't really a problem, at least we haven't seen that around, and that's Quebec City. It took us around 3 hours to get there by speed train from Montreal, and we went here for a weekend trip and stayed here overnight in a hotel called Saint Anne. It's a lovely hotel, which I can definitely recommend. Even though Quebec City is very small, we had a very tight agenda because there are plenty of places to see, and we were hungry after such a long journey, so we had lunch in a pub nearby. We tried onion soup, which was delicious, and a poutine. Again, this poutine looked a little bit different to lamb keys, but nonetheless was really delicious as well. And then we tried local popcorn, which I think is a thing in Canada because I see this chain everywhere. And of course, it's popular because it's very delicious. And then we went to explore the old town of Quebec City. It's one of the oldest cities in North America, and it has massive French influence, of course. It's a French-speaking city, similar to Montreal, but I felt like more people were speaking French here than in Montreal. And it's a very touristic city. And of course, I can see why, because it's very different to any other cities, at least I've seen in North America. But overall, people say it's very different from any city in North America. It's also, as I said, it's very old, and it even feels a little bit like Europe. So if you don't have an opportunity to travel to Europe and explore France, let's say, or Switzerland, that's probably the best place you can go to. And lots of people say that it is especially beautiful during the Christmas time because the city has a lot of Christmas lights, Christmas markets, and it's decorated in a very nice way, has this gorgeous Christmas atmosphere, and it's definitely worth visiting. So it's probably nice to visit both in Christmas and in summer to explore the two sides of the city. We also took the funicular. I think it wasn't too expensive at all, but you do have to buy a ticket. You don't have to queue for long, at least we didn't have to. And it's a nice way to get to the top, where you can see the best views of Quebec City and the most iconic building of the city. Of course, you can just walk up the hill. There are plenty of streets that you can take, but if it's windy and cold, maybe it's a good way to avoid walking too much. Now, this is the most iconic building in Quebec City, and it's also the most photographed hotel in the whole world. It's called Fairmont Chateau Frontenac, and it looks old, but it's not so old because it was opened in 1893. Now, you can say this is old, but actually the house which we bought in London was built in 1888, so it's a little bit older than this hotel. And this chateau was never a castle, it was already opened as a hotel. And yeah, you can stay there, but it is pretty pricey. After exploring the beautiful panorama of Quebec, we hired a car and drove for about 20 minutes to the gorgeous waterfalls located very, very close to Quebec City. As I said, it only takes about 20 minutes to drive there when there's no traffic, and you can easily spend a few hours exploring this beautiful national park and seeing the waterfalls from the bridge. So the waterfalls are actually really tall. Montmorency Falls are actually taller than Niagara Falls. You can enjoy the views either from the suspension bridge, the one we are currently standing on, or go all the way down and see the spectacular view of the whole waterfalls from the bottom. From May to October, you can also take a cable car for additional views of the waterfall, and overall, there are plenty of different activities you can do in this park. Usually you need to purchase a ticket to enter the park, but if budget is tight, there is a free observation deck you can stay on, absolutely free of charge. Overall, we probably spent just over an hour in Montmorency Falls. We didn't walk too much because it was relatively cold. We also were really tired and still a little bit jet lagged. So we drove back to the city center and enjoyed the city in the evening light. We walked on the square next to a theater. By the way, they have really good place if you have time to visit them. And then again walked through the beautiful streets of Quebec City. Next morning, we didn't have breakfast at the hotel. We decided to go out and have it somewhere else. So we walked again the super touristic route past the beautiful Chateau Frontenac and went to a place called Lapin Sauté. I don't know if I pronounced it correctly, but the food was delicious. And then we had a spa booked for the rest of the day. Quebec province is actually famous for its gorgeous Nordic style spas, and the weather was not too bad, so we decided to walk all the way there. I think it took us around 25 minutes to get there, and we walked along the river. The views were gorgeous, so we enjoyed them. I unfortunately didn't film much inside the spa, but that's how the spa looked like. It was an adult-only spa. It was serene and tranquil, and I can definitely recommend going there if you have time. Overall, that was all. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you in the next videos. Bye!